Welcome to Rocket Science 103, where we'll simulate the flight of Apollo 11, the first time humans landed on the moon. This project requires Spaceflight Simulator, a free download from the App Store. As the United States was developing and testing a rocket to send a crew to the moon, the Soviet Union was also pursuing a covert program with the intention of beating the United States to the moon. There were actually two competing Soviet programs. One less powerful rocket called Proton K, designed simply to send a crew once around the moon without landing, and another more powerful called N1, designed to land one man on the moon, similar to the United States rocket. But despite the Soviet Union's aggressive schedule, both Soviet heavy booster programs were plagued by delays. Although Apollo 11 set foot on the moon, it was the Apollo 8 mission, flying a crew of 3 to orbit the moon, when the United States finally pulled ahead of the Soviet Union in the space race. To start construction, turn on symmetry and place a Hawk engine at the bottom center of the rocket editor. Place 4 20-ton fuel tanks on top of the Hawk engine. Add a stage separator on top of the fuel tanks. Place a Valiant engine on the stage separator. Add a 20-ton fuel tank on the Valiant engine. Add another stage separator. Scroll the parts list up to find the Colibri engine and put it on top. Add another 20-ton fuel tank with a stage separator on top. Slide a heat shield just above the stage separator and top the rocket off with the capsule and parachute. Scroll to the very bottom of the parts list to find the landing leg and place it at the base of the top fuel tank. To start construction of the side boosters, place a Hawk engine at the base of the rocket editor to the side. Place 4 20-ton fuel tanks on top of the Hawk engines and top them off with aerodynamic nose cones. Find the side separator and attach between the side boosters and the main body. This completes construction of the Lunar Landing Rocket Simulator. Click the launch button, then tap each engine, swipe to 100%, turn on the throttle, and we have liftoff. Use the bottom arrow buttons to match the rocket with the recommended ascent angle, first 5, then 10, 20, 30, 45, 60, and 75 degrees. When the recommended ascent angle display disappears, click on the map to view the trajectory relative to the Earth. When the maximum altitude reaches a couple of kilometers above the atmosphere, turn off the throttle. When we pass the Kármán line, use the bottom arrows to orient the rocket, now just a triangle, horizontal to the atmosphere. Turn back on the throttle and steer so that the maximum altitude remains unchanged and stays a little ahead of the rocket. When the booster runs out of fuel, eject the booster and turn on the second stage rocket. Zoom out to observe the entire Earth. Observe the lowest altitude on the opposite side of the Earth and lower the throttle as it approaches the same altitude as the maximum altitude. Turn off the throttle when we reach low Earth orbit. Zoom out until you can see the moon. Click on the moon and select Navigate to. An encounter trajectory and transfer window will appear. Position the rocket just before the transfer window, turn the rocket in the direction of travel, and turn the throttle on 100%. Now we'll be threading a needle in a haystack, literally shooting the moon. When the booster runs out of fuel, eject it and turn on the second stage rocket. It's also time to extend the landing gear by clicking on each leg. When the rocket trajectory is close to the lunar trajectory, reduce the throttle so we don't miss lunar orbit. Turn off the throttle when one trajectory is shown and the trajectory appears in the lunar sphere of orbit. As the rocket approaches the moon, reduce the time acceleration. When the rocket enters the sphere of influence of the moon, stop time acceleration when the rocket is just before its closest approach to the moon. Turn the rocket opposite the direction of travel and turn on the throttle 100%. Turn off the throttle when the closest point to the moon is about 20 kilometers. Coast down to the closest point to the moon. Turn the rocket opposite the direction of travel and turn on the throttle to 100%. Turn off the throttle when we reach low moon orbit. This is a good time to create a quick save, as the lunar landing may require several tries. Turn on the throttle 100% until the trajectory intersects the lunar surface. Coast to about 10 kilometers altitude and turn on the throttle in the opposite direction of travel. When the velocity slows to 70 meters per second, adjust the throttle so the speed doesn't change. As the trajectory flattens, orient the rocket vertical. As the altitude passes 300 meters, adjust the throttle to reduce the velocity to about 20 meters per second. Click the Map button and use the bottom steering arrows to minimize the horizontal velocity. When just 30 meters above the surface, adjust the throttle to reduce the velocity to 5 meters per second. Slow down to 3 meters per second just before touchdown. Congratulations! We landed on the moon. To return home to Earth, turn on the throttle 100% and angle the rocket to achieve lunar orbit. When the altitude reaches 10 kilometers, turn off the throttle and coast to just before the maximum altitude. Turn the rocket horizontal, turn on the throttle 100%, and steer so the maximum altitude doesn't change. Once in low lunar orbit, turn off the throttle and zoom out to see the Earth. Click on the Earth and select Navigate to. A transfer window and trajectory to the Earth will appear. Place the rocket just before the transfer window, turn the rocket in the direction of movement, and turn on the throttle to 100%. Zoom out to see the Earth-Moon trajectory. As the trajectory approaches the Earth, reduce the throttle. Turn off the throttle when the trajectory intersects the Earth. Eject the capsule from the rocket. Turn the capsule to be perpendicular to the trajectory when it hits the Earth's atmosphere. Make doubly sure the capsule is still perpendicular to the trajectory so the shield takes the heat. When the altitude is at 2,400 meters, touch the parachute. Congratulations! We've been to the moon and returned safely to Earth. What would you like to do in Rocket Science 104? Like, comment, and subscribe.